Here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Ever wonder where the devil got his horns?
How about those cloven hooves?
Or that pitchfork?
Wasn't he an angel?
No, he was a snake.
No, he's the great red dragon.
No, he's the beast.
He's the prince of this world.
Prince of darkness.
Well, he's the prince of dark.
Good morning, star lovelies. One of my names is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I sometimes go by Keenan Diaz.
And we're the hosts of the brand new podcast, The Devil's Details. What comes to mind when I say Lucifer?
How about Satan?
What about just the devil? How did the big bad of the Western world end up with so many faces? Join us as we dig up, decipher, and deconstruct the devil's many forms throughout history.
Take a guided tour with Dante through the 9 circles of hell.
Or revisit Satan's angsty bad boy years in Paradise Lost.
Learn the ins and outs of a Faustian contract.
Easier than a 1099, but with a hell of a lot more fine print.
Slither on over to The Devil's Details on True Story FM and join us in the diabolic discussion.
Love and hisses. Mwah! Didn't Al Pacino play him in a movie?
Are you sure that wasn't Robert De
I could
Niro?
have sworn it was Tim Curry.
That was Elizabeth
Didn't
Hurley.
he go down to Georgia at some point?
Hooked on you, baby, you're golden. Time moves, I never noticed. Just can't get enough. Got me wonderstruck.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Make Me a Nerd. I'm Mandy Kaplan, and it is my mission to expose myself to all things geeky and nerdy that I have been missing out on my whole mainstream life. And to help me on this mission, every week I ask a very special guest or friend to come and share something from the world of nerdery that they are passionate about. I have delved very slightly into Marvel, not even really Marvel, with Legion. I have been in the shallow end with Star Wars. I've done some Rogue One and Star Wars A New Hope. Next week will be playing my first video game. What could possibly go wrong? And I am honored that a bunch of friends and esteemed colleagues and loved ones are willing to jump in and go on part of this journey with me. This week is very special, as I have asked someone in my life to share something that he loves with me. Now I'm realizing you've all seen the artwork. You know what's coming. Ladies and gentlemen, my soulmate, 20-something Zac Efron, the love of my life.
What?
Oh, it's Jeremy Klavens, my husband.
Yes. You may have had lots of friends on and colleagues, but this is the first time you're having one of your husbands on.
Yes, exactly. My first husband. And so far, having a good run, kid.
Yeah, almost 18 years.
Right? Well, now, usually when I greet a guest, I say, now let's tell everybody what our relationship is and how we know each other, but that's done.
Yeah, we're married to each other.
Gross. Took
It
care
is.
of that.
Pretty gross.
But tell the people how we met, very briefly.
So we met back in the olden days, in 1996, I believe.
Yep.
We both got cast in an independent film in New York City.
Yep.
I was the lead character.
Okay, we can cut that part.
I was the lead.
That's not the important part of the story.
Well, you were not the lead, is the important part.
I
And-
had an integral part, and I got to spit on a guy in my scene.
Yeah, that scene ended up getting cut. But
Ouch.
yeah. But we met doing that film, and the story goes that it was at the first cold reading of the script, and everybody, cast and crew, were there. And every time I said something, which was incredibly funny, I heard the most delightful little laugh down at the very far end of the cast. Very far end.
Like one of Peter Dinklage's whores in Game of Thrones.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we met and we hit it off right away, and the rest is history, except it took about 10 years between I had a girlfriend, you had a boyfriend, then I was in love with you, but you really didn't see it at all, but everybody else did. And short 10 years later, you finally caved and said that you would marry me.
And I married you.
Yeah.
And I would not call you a super geek. There are a lot of things I would call you. Like a lot.
Okay. All right. That's a different podcast.
Lazy, useless, no good, lousy, but...
You forgot dumb, I don't know the actual...
And disrespectful.
Yeah.
But there are things you geek out about. And when I said, would you want to come on the podcast? We discussed options, but this one seemed the most natural. Tell us about your history with Game of Thrones. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. You're right that I am not full geek. I've always been geek adjacent. So I go through things, I there are certain geeky things that I like, but I'm definitely not full on geek. I'm not going to show up to a con ever. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to cosplay. I don't go that deep. But with Game of Thrones, I actually avoided it for a little while. Everybody was talking about it, and I hadn't watched it. And a bunch of people at work, this is back again in the olden days when people actually went to places to work together with other people.
Yeah.
And a bunch of my coworkers and friends were watching it and talking about it. And I thought, well, I'll check it out. They said it was really, really good. And that, I definitely often shy away from fantasy, especially dragons and all that kind of stuff. It's not usually my thing. But honestly, I watched the first episode and was hooked right away. So, and then I was on for the ride for the rest of the 8 seasons.
Right. Canceling HBO and then re-signing up when
every year.
Game of Thrones was coming back. Yeah.
Yeah. Even watching, before, you remember it was like, there were a couple of seasons there where they split it and there was like a year or two between seasons, something like that, where I would watch the entire series before the next season came out. I did that, I think, twice.
Right. And I think that's part of what I'm learning about nerd culture is that obsessive, you can't get enough, might as well dive back in and start over, binge it, discuss it with other people who love it.
Yeah.
It's a little different than The Housewives. And please don't tell anybody that you catch me watching The Housewives when I eat lunch every day. But I generally don't say, oh, the new season's coming, I should go back and watch old episodes of Real Housewives. I don't do that.
Right. I also think the difference is that you don't have to. Real Housewives is like...
what if I don't remember why Teresa's not talking to Ramona? Then I have to.
They'll show it to you over and over and over again.
God love
Remind
them.
you. Shows like
can
that
we
don't
forget about Game of Thrones and talk about Housewives instead?
If you want to. Yeah, it's gonna turn into an argument.
I know.
So,
Mr. Geek adjacent.
Yeah.
I also call myself married adjacent.
Okay.
So we're playing it fast and loose with some terms here.
All right.
No, I think you are geekier than you think. If you compare yourself to me.
Oh, to you, sure.
Yeah. You play video games for hours at times.
No, I play video game. There's one video game that I play
pretty
for
geeky.
Hours. Yeah, but I'm not a game geek. I'm not into games. I don't know other games. There's one game that I love that got me hooked that, yeah.
Tell the people how much you love time travel.
Oh, okay. Well, if maybe we should have done time travel because I love time travel so much. And it actually, segueing into Game of Thrones, even though Game of Thrones is not a time travel show, my love of time travel equates to one of the reasons why I love shows like Game of Thrones, historical things, even though obviously Game of Thrones is not real history. But I love time travel so much because I think it's something that I want to be real. Mm-hmm. I like to fantasize about when I would go, what time periods I would travel to and what do I do and who maybe I could meet. Paul McCartney.
Could still happen.
But again, one of the things that Game of Thrones has, and some of the other shows that I geek out about, like Outlander and Call the Midwife, you wouldn't think that those shows have anything in common, but they actually do. And that is this other timeliness.
And a very real depiction of it.
Yes, exactly. And that's
Yeah. I mean, from going to museums with me, I'm not a museum person. I don't really care to look at stained art on the walls. But when I can go into a room and see what the cutlery looked like that they used, and I don't know why I always say hairbrushes, but
Right.
the actual daily items that were used, I find fascinating. And that's right off the bat something about Game of Thrones that I was in awe of. How detailed it felt.
Yeah.
Just the little details. Every time I was like, oh, so that's what they did. They had a barber and they went and they got their shaves just like we do today. And things like that just spark for me. They make me feel like I'm really there. It didn't feel Hollywood. It felt real. It's so complete, this world they've created.
That is what struck me as well. And that's what pulled me in initially. And in fact, the very first note that I have on this rewatch that you and I did.
Not together, because that would be breaking the rules.
Not together.
Separate.
Which is how we live most of our marriage.
Yes.
I wrote what I love. And the first thing I wrote is, it feels real.
Weirdly, I think children are a big part of that. There are a lot of children, whether they just run through a scene playing or we see them, in the background eating or working.
Yeah.
Having kids there is something we just don't usually see. We usually see warriors and their women folk in these things, but not a lot of kids. There are tons of kids on this show.
Yeah. Yeah, there are. And to me, it's it goes to, I think it goes, not that I'm an expert on cinematography or lighting, but the cinematography, however they shoot this show and other shows like the ones that I mentioned that I just truly love, cinematography, lighting, color palette, or maybe that's done in post with color grading and color correction.
Nerd alert. You're
alert.
An editor.
I'm
You're
an
a
editor.
TV editor. So you're saying things like post and color correction and.
Right. So definitely something I notice is, how it looks and how it sounds with sound design. When talking about cutting the hair, like you could hear the hair being cut.
Yeah.
And it sounded real, even though obviously it was added afterwards. And makeup and costumes. All of those together bring this world to life in a way that most shows don't.
Absolutely.
And that's I think that is the hook that can then get you into the story, which is certainly very, very geeky.
Right. Well, it's not, isn't it the Carringtons and the Ewings? It's a soap opera at its heart.
Well, yes, it is. But this is actually one of the things that I don't love about Game of Thrones. To me, I could do without all the, I don't know what you would call it, the
melodrama.
No.
Oh, the magical elements. I
like the dragons, but you didn't really get to this part where we really see this race, basically, that they're talking. The White Walkers. Yeah.
We did.
We saw one at the beginning.
So at the very beginning, British Matt Damon is like, oh, boring, body part Stonehenge. And I was a little shocked that he was not surprised by that. Didn't affect him at all. And then he turns around and it's a blue-eyed monster. And I was like, oh, that's not what I expected. Then there was a creepy little blue-eyed Megan.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
There was. Yep.
And I was drawn in. Then I didn't see anything about, they mentioned White Walkers after that, but I know that's coming down the road, is that mythical non-human element. And I know dragons, I've heard things about the Red Wedding, and I know that it gets real mythical and out of the ordinary, but I agree that I want to know more about why Kat looked at the sun on the ground and they had that intense look, and then she walked away and I was like, what's happening there? That's soap opera.
Yeah, that to me is what I loved about the show, is the chess game of Game of Thrones. Who's going to occupy the Iron Throne? How are they going to get there?
Didn't get that.
Yeah.
Until you just separated it out like that for me. Thanks for Oh, it's a Game of Thrones.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I literally didn't think of that.
Yeah. That to me is that's what's intriguing to me is the human element and who's doing what. And I like the dragon stuff with the White Walkers. because to me, White Walkers are zombies, and I'm not a zombie guy.
Side note.
Yeah.
Jeremy doesn't like scary movies. He gets very scared.
Get very scared. Yeah.
Yes. So I saw the White Walkers and I was like, oh boy, should I go comfort Jared downstairs as he's watching? But especially the Megan, Jared doesn't like. There's a lot of things about Game of Thrones I would imagine you don't like. Jared's number one rule, no kids in peril. What up, little Bran? Knew he was going to fall off that wall in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing that I'm okay with pushing little children out of windows.
Of course.
Yeah.
Casey, don't listen to this anymore. Casey is our 14-year-old son.
Yeah.
Just for anyone listening who's new to our world, there are many, many things about Game of Thrones that are a turnoff for me. Number one is the violence. I mean, and not just violence, but they're really trying to shock you with the barbarianism of what life was like back then. So every time a scene ends, they hard cut to some kind of bloody mass.
Yeah.
A gutted animal, a pig on a spit, some guy being dragged off bloody and beaten. Every time not every time, but I was like, there's your drinking game. Every time they cut to a bloody mass, drink.
Yeah.
And that's a good time.
I know that you have a hard time with that kind of realistic, gory violence and slash de-skinned animals.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But again, to me, that just adds to the realism. None of it feels fake. It all feels, in fact, fun fact that I learned.
Bing! I should have a noise for fun fact.
In that, it's not quite the opening scene. It's when Ned and the boys find the direwolves.
Ned is not a Game of Thrones-y name. Ned.
I know. There's also an Uncle Kevin, which everybody thinks is hilarious.
No. All right. So when they find the direwolves, thank God they didn't kill the puppies. Go ahead.
Right. So there's a shot of the dead deer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real dead deer.
How? What?
Like I don't know. They didn't kill it for the show. I'm sure somehow it came to them, but that's real. And again, not that I'm advocating violence against animals, but that adds to, because I actually looked at that shot before I looked this up, and I was like, God, I mean, that's the beauty of the show is the fur looks bloody and matted and real, and it turns out it was.
Oh God, I have such a stinky face.
Yeah.
Now,
you mean right now? Right.
Now I remember I'm going in the Wayback Machine, and I think we can all remember Silver Spoons, the very special episode where Ricky went hunting.
Sure. I think that sparked what's his face's love of hunting.
Right. And wife beating?
Yeah.
Or those
that was
two
a different episode.
Right. But I remember they had to put a disclaimer on the episode saying no animals were actually harmed. And that was so meaningful to me because I was, 9 or 10 years old. And it was very tough to see and watch. And
yeah. Well, if you notice at the end of this episode, it said all animals were harmed.
Well, I noticed there was no disclaimer that they weren't. I noticed since the Ricker.
Obviously, I know they didn't kill a deer for the show, like I said, but I just thought that was an interesting fact that it's just one of those things that adds to the realism, and that is the core of why I love this show so much.
And I know you love Succession. They're not far off to me.
I see, family drama, fighting for who's next, underhanded dealings, all this intrigue. Right. They are very similar.
And there's something about, I'm not a huge Succession fan. I liked it, but I just didn't really feel the need to continue because it was so potty mouthed. But that was much easier to follow. This one, I was lost because I was watching under the auspices that Ned Stark was the king. And then Nick Offerman with a beard arrives. And
do you know who that is?
The king.
Yeah, but do you know who it is?
The king. We could do this all day.
The Full Monty.
The Full Monty. Wait,
that's
the
Mark
friend?
Hattie. Yep. The
That's Mark
heavyset guy. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Oh, bless his heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I liked their relationship, but I guess I just found it confusing. I actually used a character guide as I was watching,
Smart.
which you can find them anywhere on the internet. And thank goodness, because there are so many unshowered people with beards and
Yeah.
long scraggly hair. I couldn't keep it all straight. So when you were first watching, did you have moments like that too, when you were like, oh, wait a minute, I thought that was the king?
Absolutely.
And
there's
it
a lot.
doesn't put you off of it?
No, it didn't. It didn't with this. There are certainly times, there's shows that I've watched that I'm like, I don't get who's who. I don't get it. I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
This was not one of them. I felt safe in the hands of Benioff and Weiss, the creators of the show.
I thought it was one person named Benny Offenweiss. And I was like, well, that's a great name.
I went to camp with Benioff and Weiss.
Benny Offenweiss. That's a great name.
Yeah.
But I know Benioff. And yeah, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't put my finger on why I felt so safe, but maybe it's just what we just talked about with the high quality of those first scenes.
The production.
Yeah. It just, you're like, okay, they know what they're doing. So
right.
I can trust that they will tell me what I need to know when I need to know it. And there are definitely things going back and watching it that you're like, oh, I get it now, because you're not supposed to know now, but because I know things that happen later.
Sure.
You see the seeds planted, which is
But
brilliant.
that's also because it was based on books. So they had the benefit of knowing what was coming, right?
Yes. Well, and
like,
and that comes into play later when they ran out of books. And that's when the show tanked, because they didn't have that backbone.
Oh, okay. Well, to me, what you just described, because I am the analogizer and I must compare it to something, is like, if I'm going to go to a Bobby Flay restaurant and I don't recognize the ingredients, that's okay. Because it's Bobby Flay. It's a well-known chef with a proven track record. And from jump, this show is, like you said, you're in good hands. It's well-produced. It's well-crafted. It's thoughtful. And they know what they're doing. So
yeah,
you go along for the ride, even though you're confused.
Yeah. And part of the fun too is those reveals, or those moments that you have when you're like, oh wait, Ned's sister was married or supposed to be married to the king, and something's going on there. I don't quite understand it. And Jon Snow, whose kid is he? He's not. He's a bastard. He's a bastard, but who's his mom? And, and these are all things that you don't really know the answer to until much later.
Right. Well, of course. I mean, that's the nature of a serial thing, and you're supposed to learn as you need it.
Right.
I am amazed at how I recognize so many of these actors. I mean, they all just catapulted.
Oh, yeah.
Every one of them.
Fun fact.
Unbelievable. Oh, bing.
Sansa, Sophie Turner.
Mm-hmm.
This was her first role ever. She had never acted before.
She's the redhead.
Redhead.
Yeah.
And
married Joe Jonas.
Okay, sure.
Yep. And bitter divorce now.
Oh, great. Cool.
Yep. Mainstream update.
Yeah. But that was something
That's the only thing I know about Sophie Turner.
And I think she's wonderful in this show. And then you only watched 2 episodes, right?
Correct.
So in the 3rd episode, we really see Maisie Williams. We see more of her as Arya. And to me, I think she's my favorite on the show throughout the whole thing. Yeah. You see a ton of her in episode 2. But we'll get there. Slow your roll, Klavens. Hey, sorry.
We are with these families. What are the names? Lannister and...
We have the Starks.
The Starks and the Lannisters.
The Lannisters. We also, Robert, the king, is a Baratheon.
Okay.
I think those are the 3 families that we meet.
And the Flanders, as we established.
Sure.
And then, then we hard cut, different lighting. We're in Albino City with the brother and sister.
Well, I don't think we're allowed to say that anymore. I think that's a bad term, I think.
Oh, it is?
I'm not sure.
Oh,
I don't know what you're saying. I don't know. But we all get what you're saying.
Okay.
They have white hair.
Yes, and very pale skin, and it's
The
Daenerys,
Targaryens. Yeah.
the Targaryens.
Yes.
So I watched that first scene, and it's intriguing, and it's different feel, and it's so brightly lit, and you're out of the winter, and I was watching that, and I wrote, so that's how it is in their family. Always a classic joke.
Yeah, sure.
Because he touched her boobie.
He did.
And I was like, and I always wanted a big brother. That's sweet. And and then, of course, a few scenes later, we see the queen and her brother getting it on.
Yeah.
And I was like, so that's how it is in their family. I
that's
always wanted
really,
a big brother.
Yeah, that's really how it is in their family. Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote it. I wrote it twice. I just cut and paste on my document.
Yeah. Yeah. Daenerys and Viserys, I think, he's not having sex with her, but Cersei and Jaime, full on brother and sister, twins.
Oh,
they're
are
twins,
they now?
And they are hot and heavy for each other.
Oof.
And that's also,
I'm hot and heavy for both of them a little too. They are good-looking people.
They're good-looking people. Yeah.
Yes. Lena Headey and the other guy, right?
I think it's Headey, but I'm not sure. I think it's Lena Headey and Christoph. I can't remember his last name.
Okay, never correct me on my podcast. Do you understand me?
Yeah, totally. But what's the other thing that I love is in this show, and I'm not an expert on the show. Somebody listening might be like, "That's actually not true," but
if anybody listening talks like that, I'm going to unsubscribe them anyway.
All in the show. Do we have any callers yet? That's actually your impression of me when I talk. So
yes,
but
wait, did we have plans tomorrow night?
What's for dinner? But that push of Bran out the window basically starts this whole thing that we are going to see unfold over the next 8 seasons. All these machinations of who's doing what and who's
doing who.
Who's doing who. Yeah. Anyway. So
a lot of doing
in this show. Yeah.
When we are with Daenerys, and she gets married, right? To the Khal Drogo of Jason Momoa
of the Dothraki. So that's another.
Does he speak ever on the series?
Yeah.
Does he learn English?
Can't remember. Maybe a little.
Okay.
So
I looked it up because I've never seen Jason Momoa in anything except a T-Mobile commercial. And I thought, he's so interesting to look at, and he's his own specimen. He's really impressive.
Yeah.
And I think quite good without words. And I thought maybe they plucked him from wrestling or something and put him in the show. But he was an accomplished actor before this.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He had dozens of credits.
Huh.
And long-term roles on series and stuff. So
I had no idea.
I thought that was interesting. And what a bold move for him to say, I'll take on a role where I barely speak. I found that interesting.
Yeah, I think he's great. He gets across everything that he needs to get across. Which is mostly rape. But, there's some tenderness too.
So I was going to say some tender rape.
Yeah.
So, they get married, and at the reception, people just brutally murder each other for sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not unlike our wedding.
True.
Right?
Well, like Jorah Mormont said, if there's not 3 deaths at a wedding, it's a failure.
Bad omen.
So I think we nailed it perfectly.
We're going to have a great marriage.
Yep.
Yeah. I was so appalled by that sequence. It was so difficult to watch. I said this on a past episode about violence in movies. It's like the stuff that seems like it could happen in real life.
Right.
I don't mind, pew, pew, bang, bang, but this was just so, the brutality was off the charts of them. I thought it was a dance at first, and they were entertaining the new queen, and then it oh my God, the bloodshed. It was just
it is
appalling.
pretty graphic.
Pretty hilarious.
Pretty hilarious. No, it is very like base,
Yes.
very, very base and animalistic. And now, granted, that's because that's what the Dothraki are, but
Well,
that happens
hello,
all
Ned
over this
Stark.
world.
Ned Stark killed that kid who said he saw a White Walker and made the son watch.
Right.
Jon Snow's like, you have to watch. Or what did he say? He's like,
Yeah,
don't look away. And I was going, no, look away, kid, look away. I can't handle this kind of visceral violence. And the statement that like, this is really what mankind is
Right.
at our hearts. We're
Yeah.
all this bloodthirsty race. That is too upsetting to me. That's why I couldn't,
Yeah. So you shouldn't watch
pursue
anymore.
Game of Thrones. Right. Yeah. And that I do think is a theme I get from even from Star Wars Rogue One. Like there's just such a violence and a vengeful, and if you wrong me, I'm going to take out your whole village mentality about some of the things I've been watching. And I watched Castlevania, and Castlevania is anime, and it was too violent for me. It's, it's really, it's such a disturbing violence. It's not like a car chase with guns. It's just it's something very scary.
I get it, and I think you touched on it. That is something that can happen. Now, are we going to go to a Dothraki wedding and see that? No, but that kind of human on human violence is something that can happen, and certainly has happened throughout our history.
Right.
And I know how your mind works, and you equate, I see that there, and you equate it to things that actually did happen. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to believe people actually do that and go through it and suffer it. And it's disturbing. I totally see that. But I also think shows like this allow that kind of violence to, it's not that it's okay, but it allows you to experience it in a world that is not our own.
Right.
And somehow that makes it a little bit more approachable.
Well, we'll never know the true psychological effects. Like, was the Satanic Panic real in the 80s with heavy metal music inspiring?
No, it was not. We know that.
But that's what I just said. We know now that the Satanic
I wasn't listening to you. Sorry, what?
Panic wasn't real.
What needs for dinner?
But I guess for me, it's more about these first-person shooter games and these things that allow people to have these violent fantasies. Is it healthy because it's just a fantasy, or is it sparking real violence? And I don't think we know that in society today. And I'm not accusing Game of Thrones of causing violence at all, but I'm not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And there's not one musical number in this show.
I'm trying to think ahead. I feel like there might be some musical numbers. I certainly know there's a play.
Oh.
It's probably this season or next season. I can't remember.
Yeah. So episode 1 was gripping. It was hard to follow, but I tried my best.
Okay.
I was so much more intrigued by those moments between brothers banging sisters and mothers giving weird looks to bastards on the snow. Was it Jon Snow she gave the look to? No. It was Rob Snow. It was Jon Snow.
Yeah.
So that stuff had me leaning in.
Right.
All of the there's impending war outside, and there's that stuff turns me off. It's just too grand. I couldn't follow any of that stuff. And then I pressed play on episode 2 right away.
Yeah.
And the little thing appears that says skip the recap, and I was like, nope. I need the recap. I just watched it and I need the recap. So watching the recap, they make such a big deal about John Herron. Who the frick is John Herron? He's dead
John Aaron. John Herron. Yeah.
Okay. What did I say about correcting me on my podcast?
So sorry.
They're going to change the name. He's dead with rocks on his eyes. Yeah. But who is he?
So,
why does that matter?
Okay. Again, this is stuff that they don't tell us. We don't know.
Okay.
My guess is maybe in the books you do know a little bit more. I never read the books. So I know when I was watching it for the first time, I would say the same thing. Who the hell is John Aaron, and what does he have to do with this? And you look it up, and maybe somebody who had read the book says, tells you what's what. I know that, so John Aaron was the hand to the king. So the hand? Yeah, the hand. That's why Robert has come up to Winterfell to ask Ned to do, is I need you to be the new hand of the king. It's like chief of staff.
Chief of staff. Got it.
Basically, right?
Leo McGarry.
McGarry. McGarry. Sorry.
That's 3. I'm packing your shit.
So, yes, as far as I understand it, the hand of the king is like the chief of staff or something akin to that, or right-hand man, if you will. And John Aaron was Robert's hand. He died mysteriously.
We find out he was murdered from the note in the fire. Go ahead.
Right. So he was murdered. We don't know who murdered him or why yet. That's why Robert is now coming to Winterfell to ask Ned to replace John Aaron. And we also know that John Aaron was like a father to Ned, I believe they say. He was a beloved person, and apparently a good person. And for the past, almost 20 years, Robert has been on the throne with John Aaron at his side. Mm-hmm. And before that, Robert was not king. That's why he's called the usurper. He took the throne from Daenerys and Viserys's father, I believe.
Okay.
Or maybe grandfather. I'm sorry if I'm getting this wrong to people who really know, but a Targaryen was on the throne, and he was called the Mad King. And Jaime Lannister, the sister effing guy, killed him in what is called Robert's Rebellion. So Robert wanted to overthrow the Mad King, and did. Ned was part of that battle. That's why he and Robert are so close.
But see, none of this is clear, right? You're telling me stuff,
but it's in there. It's just it's just touched upon, hinted at.
It's too dense for me.
Yeah.
But yet, I mean, and I'm being facetious, but if you said, well, what happened in the rose ceremony, I could go on and explain, oh, well, she said this about her. So, they kicked her out of the house and he had to talk like, that's Bachelor people. The
difference is that on The Bachelor, all of that was on screen. So like when you're talking about the rose ceremony, it is stuff that was on screen. True. This is all like hinted at, and it is very dense, and you don't really know unless you've read the books or looked online and tried to.
Did you read the books?
No.
I feel like you read one, no?
I started. You actually got me the first one. And then,
I'm so nice.
Yeah, you were very nice back then. And I started it, and then I was like, I don't want to get ahead of the show. So I stopped, and I just never read it. But maybe I'd go back and read it, because I really do love the world so much. Yeah. Do you understand who Jon Snow is? And like...
Here's what I wrote.
Yeah, okay.
Here's what I wrote. Ready? This is halfway through the second episode, because I wrote, the dogs are such a clever way of showing passage of time. The wolves, right?
Yeah.
And then I wrote, what's the connection between Jon Snow and that feisty little girl, whose name I now know is Arya?
Right.
And why does the mom hate Jon Snow? Mm. And was he, in fact, in Menudo? Those are my notes.
Sure.
So if it'll give you a sense of how much I was following, which was not a lot.
But again, you're not supposed to truly understand it yet. Like you're just not supposed to. You're supposed to know, like, why does Kat not like him? Okay, well, he's the bastard,
right?
Not her son, so maybe that's why.
I wrote back. I went back when that became clearer to me, and I added that in.
Right, and it's also not like when you're introduced to all the Stark children, you have no idea that he's not actually a Stark till then he says, "I'm not a Stark," and you're like, "Wait, but I thought." And it's confusing.
Right, but you got the curly hair and the muscles. So you look like a Stark.
Right, and you're palling around with everybody, and you're wearing nice clothes,
I think that's where I need to let go, and I'm learning this as on my journey. I'm learning it's okay that I don't know all the details.
Right.
Was that a really intense scene with some wonderful acting? Sure, let me just enjoy that scene for what it was.
Right.
And episode 2 had, this is where young Billy Zabka comes to town?
That is terrible. Joffrey. You're talking about
Yes, the little bratty prince or whatever he is.
Joffrey. I mean,
but tell me that's not what Billy Zabka would have played.
Yeah, but okay, he doesn't look like Billy Zabka except for
yes,
blonde
he does.
hair. Except for
I think
blonde
he looks
hair.
like Billy Zabka.
Also, nobody under 40 is going to know who Billy Zabka is.
Nobody under 40 listens to this podcast.
Perfect then.
Yeah. So, okay, but here's what I love. So do you remember when we were in our backyard, I think it was after a birthday party, and Casey, our son, got into a fight with his best friend. Yeah. They must have been about 7. And tears, I'm not friends with him anymore.
Never want to be friends with you.
Yeah. Never wanted to talk to him again. And we had to sit there and the parents had to sit on opposite sides and say, well, what happened? Well, how did you feel when he hit you? I forget what happened between the two boys. But that's what that scene was with Ned Stark and Robert. And what should we do to punish the kids? And how should we handle this? And is your kid lying to you or is my kid lying to me? And that's a scene I just loved because it's like, well, I've been there.
Right. It's real stuff. Except
the future of a nation did not.
Yeah.
Right. And we didn't kill a butcher's boy or anything, which is maybe something we should have done.
Yeah. We were bad.
If we're going to
we should have let
look back at our parenting.
Butcher's boy. Yeah.
Right. But, wait, did Billy Zabka kill the butcher's boy?
No, he didn't. He cut his face a little and then the hound killed him later.
Oh,
that big guy with the burnt face.
Yeah, I was confused about him.
Okay, we could talk about him.
But, well, but I think those are the things that I really loved about the show.
Yeah.
You know, things that it's like, so that's how I can equate my current life or current life today with how it would have been, what was this, 30, 40 years ago?
Yeah. Well, but it doesn't it doesn't take place anytime. It's a different world.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? This is not, I mean, yes, it's sort of modeled after medieval times, I suppose, but it's not actually our world, you know? We don't have dragons and White Walkers.
Sure. Is hygiene ever brought up over the 8 seasons? Because I could smell the show. Yeah,
but again, that's part of the beauty of it is that the makeup is so good and the costumes are so good that they really do look dirty and the people really do look sweaty and dirty and gross.
All the fur, and they're wearing fur with little faces and legs, and
it's so real.
Ugh. It's very upsetting. So now, as a card-carrying member of PETA, not really, but you know I love animals.
Sure.
My favorite part of the show is that the dogs were heroes twice.
Yeah.
They saved Bran.
Yep.
Bran's dog saved him, and Arya's dog saved her.
Yep.
Or attacked the prince.
Yeah.
I mean, you add a dog hero.
Right. And how sad. And Arya was like, go, Nymeria, leave.
Yes.
And had to send Nymeria away. Yeah.
Now, if the dogs were voiced by Don Amici, I'd be in.
Okay.
Don Amici.
So now nobody under 60.
Nobody under 85 knows my references, but topical stuff. Are there other points you want to geek out over?
Yeah.
With Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Go for it.
The only thing that I'm sure there are other things, but this to me is, again, another one of the just brilliant moves by this show that immediately draws you in, and that is the opening credits.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if this was the first show to do this, but to me, it was the first show that I remember that had opening credits that really told a story about the world you're going to be living in for the next hour or so. Mm-hmm. That it wasn't just names on a screen, and it wasn't just like Mad Men. I remember the credits were great.
That's the one I was going to bring up.
Yeah, and they were great, and they did tell a story, but it was more a story in a kind of highfalutin way. Like it was representative of something, but it wasn't an actual something. You know what I mean? Right. And it was more artistic in that way. Mm-hmm. This is like, here's a map of the world. Did you get this at all when you saw it?
There might have been some tuning out on the opening credits.
Okay. So this is the one show.
And now, as you talk about them.
the two
No,
shows
I'm just kidding.
that I never, ever skipped the opening credits. In all 8 seasons, I watched them because they change. So the more of the world we know, and for each episode, the credits highlight those regions of the world that are featured in the episode. And they change within that too. So like the more we see, or, if a city is changed or whatever at some point in the show, that representation on that opening credits map changes.
Oh, cool.
It's very cool. So again, I don't know, to me, that was like just such a brilliant, brilliant move to set the table. Whether you know it or not, you're still watching it and you're like, oh, wait, does that say the wall right there? And does that say Winterfell? Oh, so that's Winterfell and that's the wall and there's King's Landing. And, and then there's other areas of the world that we haven't seen yet, in episode 2, that are later added to the opening credits. And to me, it's just so brilliant. It starts from, I don't know, it's like the show starts from that moment rather than after the credits. And then of course the theme music is mind blowing. I mean, just mind blowing. So
agree. Now, counterpoint.
Sure.
On the Housewives, they change their quotes every season to show their growth.
Oh, you mean like when they're chirons, when they're
I'm a babe wrapped up in a wad of cash and a blah blah blah. Yes, you go through some seasons of Orange County and you'll know what I'm talking about. Dynamic opening credits.
Okay.
That tell the story as it continues.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, and Housewives, I'm sure, really influenced Game of Thrones. I mean, it's virtually
it's not far off.
It is not far off.
If I could do a thesis, if I had time, I would compare the two, and you'd be amazed. Because there's always a king and a queen or queen of housewives, and somebody trying to dethrone her and take her down and get allies.
Oh, what did you think?
This is real.
What did you think of Peter Dinklage?
I think he's perfection on screen.
He's so good. He's so good.
He's finding humor. He's finding levity, and I'm scared of him.
Yeah.
Because I think he's probably going to brutally murder a lot of people in the coming seasons, and I think he's perfection.
Yeah. I think the acting across the board is so good, and it continues. They hire just wonderful, wonderful people. You said you had a question about the Hound.
Oh, yeah, the guy with the Bernie face?
Yeah.
The Phantom of the Opera? I don't know. Yeah, I just didn't know who he was or what he was doing, and he appeared a couple times, and I was like, oh, he's creepy, but I didn't get a sense of him.
Again, I think that's one of the good things about the show is they don't over-explain everything, and it's just, there's that guy you've seen a couple of times, you'll understand his story in a little bit. So anyway.
Yeah.
So he's
a friend of show.
He's a friend of the show.
And Housewives, they have friends of, and they're not part of the cast. Yeah.
I take it you're not going to watch more.
I am not. I
was so hoping that it would be a thing that you're like, actually, I like it. And then we'd have a show to watch together.
If you could take the violence out and have everybody clean, I might be on board. No, the violence is too much for me.
Yeah,
it's so bleak. And hey, tough to be a vegetarian back then, or wherever they are. The food alone is so nauseating to me. All the carcasses and watching poor Daenerys eat the jerky, it was just too much. It was a tough watch, but I really, really, really respect it. And knowing how much I like soap operas and Downton Abbey and shows like that, I could see why everyone would be hooked.
Yeah.
There's so many twists and turns and fascinating ideas. So good on you, Game of Thrones. Are you doing House of the Dragon?
No. So that is something actually I wanted to bring up. So when House of the Dragon came out, I watched, I think, 2 episodes, and I was like, this to me feels fake. Part of that could just be a reaction to, I loved Game of Thrones so much, and I like those characters and those stories, and this is not that. And so, maybe if I just saw this without watching Game of Thrones, maybe I'd like it, but it immediately felt cheaper. Like Game of Thrones, they actually filmed in castles. They not all the time, obviously, but a lot of it was real places. And I don't know if House of Dragon does that, but immediately I was like, this just feels fake. It feels like in House of Dragons, I've tried Vikings, I've tried a bunch of other shows. And I'm like, it just feels, I can see people pretending to be in that time period.
Right.
And
it's one of the things you said you liked about Star Wars was that it was all, they built it. It was all practical. It was real.
That's why I don't like the new Star Wars stuff, because a lot of it's CGI.
Right. Stick around for just a minute, if you will, because I have my business break to handle. Make Me a Nerd is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Pete Wright. Theme song is Wonderstruck by Jane and the Boy. Please, if you're listening on Apple, leave me a review. Write a review. You just go below the stars and you click write a review, and you can comment and jump into the conversation there. Let me know what you think. And you can reach out on social media at Mandy_Kaplan_Klavens, both with K's, on Instagram. If you are feeling generous and like you want to be a bigger part of the family, please go to makemeanerd.com and click the join button. $5 a month will get you bonus content and extra access to me on Discord and just more fun in general with this nerdy community that I am cracking my way into. I said crack. Okay, so sometimes I do a quiz.
Oh.
So I found a Which Game of Thrones Character Are You quiz on BuzzFeed. Now, these are 100% accurate.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I listened to your other episodes, and I took it upon myself to take the How Geeky Are You quiz.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I got a 70.
You and I should talk. A 70?
70. I thought it would be much higher.
Me too.
Yeah, 70. Anyway, go ahead.
I feel like you lied.
I didn't.
Well, I took the quiz for me and for you.
Oh, wait, for this quiz?
I did.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, I'm Robb Stark and you're Jon Snow. So we are half brothers, which I find very, very hot.
Or are we?
Oh.
Oh, shoot.
I would drop my mic, but it's very expensive.
Yeah.
But you just blew my mind.
Yeah.
And now we actually have something to talk about over dinner, which is nice.
And now you have to watch the show.
Not going to happen. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, my incredibly wonderful husband, Jeremy Klavens, who is not on social media and does not want you to reach out to him in any way, shape, or form.
If you have my email address or phone number, you can text, call, or email me.
Okay. And do the laundry.
Nope.